My name's John. I'm 39, born and raised in Tennessee, and I work as a residential electrician in and around Nashville. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. I've spent the last 2 decades crawling through attics, chasing breakers, and listening to clients talk about things I barely understand while I'm fixing what they shorted out. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of order. I know what to expect when I flip a breaker or chase a wire through drywall. Real life, wasn't always that predictable, especially not when it came to Stephanie. We've been married for 12 years, together even longer. We met at a 4th of July barbecue. She was wearing this red sundress, and I swear, I didn't notice a single firework that night. She used to have this laugh that could light up a room. It wasn't just loud, it was real. Back then, everything felt real. The way she'd sneak her cold feet under the blankets and pretend it was an accident. The way she'd leave notes in my lunchbox with doodles and dumb jokes. That was the kind of stuff you don't think you'll lose. But lately, it had started to feel muted, like I was living with a version of her that had the volume turned down. The night everything started to click, the night the first real crack showed up, was almost forgettable on paper. I just wrapped up a long job south of the city. It was a kitchen remodel with a client who couldn't make up her mind about where she wanted the outlets. I'd been there 4 days longer than I needed to be, crawling around in sawdust and dealing with change orders. By the time I got in my truck, I was sore, hungry, and just ready to go home. Stephanie had mentioned a new restaurant that opened near downtown. Something trendy, farm to table. Normally, she'd be dragging me to places like that, and I'd be pretending to care about quinoa while secretly hoping they served real fries. But she'd been going out more often without me lately. Work dinners, fitness events, networking nights. I was starting to feel like her +1 had been retired. So I figured, what the hell? Maybe I'd surprise her. Bring something home, have a decent meal, sit on the couch, maybe even catch a rerun of something dumb we used to watch together. I pulled up to the restaurant just after 6. It wasn't packed yet, so I parked right across the street. The whole block had this glow to it, soft lights, clean windows, couples sitting outside, smiling like they were in some commercial. I stepped inside, and before I even reached the host's stand, I saw her, Stephanie. She was seated by the window, in one of the booths near the corner. I didn't recognize her right away. She was dressed sharp, like interview sharp. That blazer I bought her last Christmas. The one she said was too nice to wear to the office. And those heels that made her a half-inch taller than me. Her hair was down in the way she usually saved for date nights or weddings. And she was smiling. Laughing, actually. Really laughing. Head tilted slightly to the side. That same sparkle in her eyes I hadn't seen in months. And across from her sat a man. David. I'd heard the name before. He came up here and there in conversations about work. Always as David from finance or David's team. Nothing alarming, not really. But sitting there watching them from across the room, it didn't look like coworkers catching up. It looked personal. They were sitting closer than they needed to be. His hand was resting on the table between them, just a few inches from hers. At one point, she reached up, smiling, and straightened his tie. It was quick, probably 2 seconds, but it felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't walk over. I just stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of it. When she finally noticed me, her smile faltered. She blinked twice like she couldn't quite believe it. Then she sat up straight, scooted slightly back in the booth, and forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. David looked confused, then followed her gaze and saw me. I didn't make a scene. That's never been my style. I gave her the smallest nod, enough to acknowledge her, enough to say, "I see you," and turned around. Walked right out of the restaurant and got back in my truck. My hands were shaking as I sat behind the wheel, staring at the dash like it might offer answers. She got home later that night, maybe around 10. I was in the garage, fiddling with an old drill that didn't need fixing. She came out acting surprised. "Oh, hey, I didn't know you'd be out here." I didn't say anything, just kept turning the drill in my hands like it mattered. I ran into David at that new place. The one I told you about. We ended up grabbing a bite. Totally random. Totally random. She used to be a terrible liar. The kind of person who'd stumble over a fib about stealing the last cookie. But lately, she'd gotten better. Too good. You were dressed nice, I said, still not looking at her. She laughed. A hollow, nervous sound. Yeah, I had that vendor meeting this afternoon. Didn't want to look sloppy. I nodded. Still didn't look at her. She walked over and leaned against the doorframe. You looked upset. I was just surprised, I said. Well, don't be. David's basically married to his job. I mean, it's not like that. I hadn't said it was. But now that she had. That night, we sat in silence on the couch. A takeout bag between us from some chain place I grabbed after leaving the restaurant. She didn't bring up the dinner again. Neither did I. But my mind wouldn't shut up. It wasn't just the laughter or the tie or the way her eyes lit up. It was the shift, the way she went from completely natural to totally guarded the second she saw me. Like something had been exposed that wasn't meant to be seen. In the days that followed, I tried to shake it off. Told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just an innocent meal. Maybe she had run into him. Nashville's not that big, right? But I couldn't forget the way she looked at him. Or the way she didn't quite meet my eyes when she got home. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to notice other things. Small things, like she'd been staying later at work. More often than usual. She used to call me on her way home, just to chat. That had stopped. She'd started wearing perfume again, subtle but new. Her phone always face down. Always on silent. It's amazing, really, how fast your mind can rewrite the last 6 months once you have a new lens to look through. That night in the restaurant didn't give me all the answers. But it gave me something more dangerous, doubt. And once that seed is planted, it doesn't just sit there. It grows. That night, after seeing Stephanie with David, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan while she slept next to me like nothing had happened. I could feel the warmth of her back, the rise and fall of her breathing, but it all felt distant, like there was a wall between us now. And I couldn't stop thinking, what else have I missed? It's strange how your mind works when something cracks open like that. You start rewinding everything, conversations, movements, schedules. Like you're scrubbing back through a movie looking for all the scenes where the villain was hiding in plain sight. And once you start, you can't stop. Your brain starts stitching together a timeline from all the little red flags you ignored. And man, I had ignored a lot. I remembered when she first started working at her new job. It was a few years back. Some private consulting firm, good pay, fast-paced environment. At first, she'd come home buzzing with stories, excited about meetings and projects. She used to talk to me about everything, her coworkers, what she had for lunch, how boring the quarterly review was. But slowly that stopped. I don't know when exactly it shifted, but one day I realized she was talking around her day. Not about it. I'd ask how her afternoon was, and she'd shrug and say, fine. No details, no stories. Just fine. Then the late nights started. She was always someone who guarded her personal time. Used to hate staying late. Would say, if the workday ends at 5, I'm out by 5:01. But now she was coming home at 7:30, sometimes even later. Said she was just catching up. Or, there was a last-minute deadline. First, I believed her. I mean, work ramps up sometimes, right? But then there were the business trips. Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte. All cities where her company had offices, so the destinations made sense. But something about the way she traveled didn't. Her luggage always looked more like she was headed to a weekend getaway than a business seminar. Cute dresses, heels, new makeup bags. She never brought a laptop. Just her tablet and one of those little paperback novels she barely touched. One time, I even offered to drive her to the airport. She said no, said it would just be easier to Uber so I wouldn't have to wait in traffic. That struck me as odd, but I let it go. Another time, she came home with a tiny sunburn on her shoulders. When I asked her about it, she said it was from walking between buildings during a conference. In February, that was the first time I remember feeling something sharp in my gut. But I still talked myself out of it. You're being paranoid, I thought. She's working hard. Let it go. Then there was the gym thing. Stephanie was never a gym person. She used to joke that running was for people being chased. But a few months ago, she suddenly got into fitness. Not just casually either, full-on activewear obsession, new running shoes, workout apps, and she started going out for morning jogs before work. Said it helped clear her head. I remember being half awake one morning, hearing her get dressed in the dark. I asked where she was going, and she said she was headed to the park for a run. I nodded and rolled over. But when I got up later to leave for work, her shoes were still by the door, dry, untouched, and her sports bra was hanging in the bathroom, damp like it had been hand-washed, not worn. I told myself she must have changed her mind, but now, I wasn't so sure. Then there were her friends, the ones I never met. She started dropping new names into conversations. Rebecca from HR, Jen from client services, Taylor from accounting. She'd say they were going out for drinks after work, or meeting up at a wine bar downtown, or catching a late yoga class together. But I never met any of these people. Not once. Not even in passing. She never invited them over, never suggested I tag along, never brought them up outside of justifying why she was getting home at 10 p.m. One night, I got home earlier than usual and found her sitting in the living room in full makeup, wearing jeans and a silky blouse she hadn't worn in years. She looked surprised to see me, said she was just about to head out with the girls. But when I asked who was going, she paused. Just Rebecca and them. And them? Yeah, you know, the usual crowd. The usual crowd. The one I'd never laid eyes on. I remember watching her walk out the door that night, the scent of her perfume still hanging in the air, and feeling this emptiness in my chest. Not anger, just distance. Like we weren't in the same story anymore. Like I was watching someone else's life, and she was playing a part one didn't recognize. There were other things too. Smaller moments that didn't scream betrayal but whispered it. She started changing her passwords. We used to have everything synced. Not out of control or snooping, just transparency. But one day, I went to use the iPad and realized the PIN had changed. When I asked, she brushed it off. Said she updated her passwords for security reasons. Her phone, too. Always face down. Always locked. Always with her. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter while we ate, while we watched TV, while she showered. Now it never left her side. And any time I glanced over, the screen was black. There were texts she'd glance at and then put away quickly. Random calls she'd step outside to take. One time, I caught a glimpse of her screen when a message popped up. It was just a name, D. But the tone of it stuck with me. Something casual. Something familiar. She laughed less around me. Smiled less. Talked less. When I'd try to make plans, she'd say she was tired. When I asked how her day was, she'd shrug. When I reached for her hand, sometimes she wouldn't reach back. It was like she was slowly shifting away, 1 degree at a time, and I hadn't noticed how far she'd gone until it was too late. But after that night at the restaurant, after seeing her with David, all those little moments came rushing back like floodwaters. The trips, the lies, the late nights, the phone. It all made sense now, and it scared the hell out of me how easily I had talked myself into believing everything was normal. That realization broke something in me. Not in an explosive way. There was no yelling, no confrontation. Just a quiet, gut-deep sense of betrayal that clung to me like humidity in the air. Couldn't breathe right. I couldn't think straight. Every conversation with her felt like I was acting. Smiling when I didn't feel like it. Asking how her day was when what I really wanted to ask was, where did you go? Who were you really with? I started writing things down in a notebook. Times, places, names. Not because I had a plan, but because I needed to feel like I wasn't crazy. Like if I could just put it all in one place, I'd see the truth. Or at least prove to myself that I wasn't imagining the distance. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, she kept acting like everything was fine. Like we were fine. But we weren't. Because now I knew the story I thought we were living wasn't the one she was writing. And deep down, I could feel something building, something coming. I just didn't know how much worse it was going to get. It happened on a Saturday morning. Not the kind of morning you brace for. There was no argument the night before, no tension in the air, Nothing to signal that everything was about to snap. Just sunlight pouring through the blinds, the smell of coffee in the kitchen, and that stillness you get when the world hasn't fully woken up yet. Stephanie was out on a run. That's what she called them now, morning runs. I'd gotten used to hearing the front door click shut around 6:30 a.m. and her returning like clockwork an hour later, sweaty and out of breath. But I'd stopped believing the runs were real a while ago. Too many things didn't add up, especially the time she sprained her ankle and still came home without a limp. That morning, she left her tablet on the kitchen counter. That detail alone was odd. She never left her devices out anymore. Phone, laptop, tablet, they all followed her like pets. I stared at it for a few minutes, sipping my coffee, the logical side of my brain screaming at me to just leave it alone. But I didn't. It wasn't out of revenge or paranoia. It wasn't even about proving anything anymore. I just needed to know. I needed the truth, not suspicions, not hunches. I wanted something solid I couldn't ignore. Something that would silence the part of me that still held on to hope. The screen was still on. She hadn't locked it. A messaging app was open. I didn't recognize the name. It wasn't iMessage or Facebook or anything familiar. Something more niche. Something meant to hide in plain sight. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before I tapped it. The first thing I saw was a picture. Not a revealing one, but still in asterisk mate. Stephanie and David in a hotel room mirror, smiling like teenagers on a getaway. His arm wrapped around her waist, her head against his shoulder. No room for interpretation. This wasn't just friends or coworkers blowing off steam after a long project. This was something else entirely. Below the photo were the messages. David, can't stop thinking about Tuesday. You looked incredible in that dress. Stephanie, you're sweet. I didn't even want to take it off. David, I can't wait for next weekend. Rooms already booked. Same place, same time? Stephanie, absolutely. Just need to make up another networking event. Smirking face. My hands went cold. I scrolled back through the conversation and found weeks, months of messages. Plans, jokes, pet names, selfies, inside jokes that I wasn't a part of. Details about me, even little barbs tossed in like I was the joke in someone else's relationship. David, he doesn't suspect a thing, right? Stephanie, not a clue. He still thinks I'm doing morning jogs face with tears of joy. David, that's wild. You're a great liar. Stephanie, I know. Scary, right? I don't know how long I stood there reading. The world went quiet around me. No birds, no hum of the refrigerator. Nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing and the words in front of me, confirming everything I had feared. When I finally set the tablet down, I didn't feel rage. Not yet. What I felt was numb, like someone had pulled the plug on the person I used to be. I walked outside, sat on the front steps, and stared at the sky. How long had I been living in a lie? How many times had she looked me in the eyes and told me she loved me while planning weekends with someone else? How many fake meetings, how many late nights at the office? How many miles had she walked right over my trust? I kept thinking about how careful she had been. The new habits, the password changes, the forgotten charger that let her keep her phone with her at all times. The way she slowly closed the blinds in her life until I could only see what she wanted me to see. But this message thread was a window she forgot to close. She got home around 7:45, just like usual. She came in through the garage, hair slightly damp from the shower at the gym she claimed to visit. Same routine, same script. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted eggs. I told her sure. I said it like I meant it. I sat at the table and watched her cook. She laughed at something on the radio, scrambled eggs, slid toast into the toaster. She looked so ordinary, so familiar. But now I knew what was underneath. The makeup she wore wasn't hiding a tired face. It was hiding a double life. As she turned around to place my plate on the table, I caught a glimpse of her lock screen, David's name, a heart emoji next to it. She caught me looking and turned the screen face down. Too fast. That's when the rage finally stirred. It didn't come out loud. I didn't yell or throw the plate across the room. I just looked at her and asked, Are you happy? She blinked. What? Are you happy, Steph? I repeated. With your life. With us. Her face shifted. Carefully. I mean, yeah. Why? I shrugged. Just wondering. Couldn't say it yet. I wasn't ready. Not because I didn't want to confront her, but because I wasn't sure what I'd do after. My entire world had just shifted off its axis, and I needed time to find my footing. Over the next few days, I became an actor in my own home. I smiled. I kissed her goodbye. I asked how her day was. But in private, I was documenting everything. I took *TS of the messages. I saved photos. I started backing up data from our shared devices, whatever I could get before she figured out I knew. I bought a journal and started writing it all down. Not just the evidence, but how I felt. The disbelief, the grief, the embarrassment. It was like grieving someone who was still alive, someone who still laid beside me at night, but who wasn't really there. I didn't tell anyone yet. Not even my closest friend, Tom. I needed to keep it quiet until I knew what I wanted. Revenge? A clean break? Some kind of redemption? I didn't know. All I knew was I needed the truth. And now I had it. One evening, about a week after I discovered the messages, I confronted her. Not directly, but with a breadcrumb. We were sitting on the couch watching some forgettable crime show, and I asked, "Do you think people can really live double lives? Like, full-on lies without their partner knowing?" She shifted uncomfortably. "You mean like cheating?" "Sure. That, or just pretending to be someone they're not." She laughed nervously. "I guess anything's possible. People are messed up." I nodded. "Yeah, I guess they are." She went quiet after that. I think part of her knew. Maybe she'd noticed the way I was watching her. Or maybe she was too far down the hole to care. But I wasn't guessing anymore. The truth wasn't just suspicion. It wasn't a gut feeling. It wasn't bad vibes. It was *TS. Messages. Photos. Room numbers. Plans. Names. It was written in digital ink, preserved in memory, and burned into my brain. And now I had a decision to make. I could confront her and let it all explode. Or I could wait, gather more, make it count. Because something told me this was bigger than just a few hotel rooms and flirty messages. And I wasn't done digging yet. I didn't plan for it to happen this way. The confrontation, I thought I'd pick my moment carefully. Some quiet evening, just the two of us, where I could lay everything on the table and demand the truth she had buried beneath excuses. I wanted it to be on my terms. Controlled. Private. But life has a way of ripping the steering wheel out of your hands at the worst possible moment. It was my mom who started the whole thing without realizing it. She called earlier in the week, asking if Stephanie and I could come to Sunday dinner. Nothing fancy, just roast, mashed potatoes, the usual. My dad had just finished putting in a new patio table, and they wanted us to be the first to break it in. Stephanie hesitated when I asked her. "What's the occasion again?" she said, barely looking up from her phone. "Just dinner with my folks. No special reason." She tapped her screen for a few seconds, then sighed. "I guess. I might have a lot of prep work for Monday, but I can swing by for a bit." Swing by, like it was a chore. A week ago, I might have brushed it off. But now, every word, every pause, felt suspicious. I watched her thumbs move across her screen and wondered if she was texting David under the table, trying to squeeze in another meeting or fake another errand. Still, I nodded like I believed her. Sunday came. She spent longer than usual getting ready. Hair curled, full makeup, the perfume I hadn't smelled in a while. I stood in the doorway watching her check herself in the mirror. "You look nice," I said. She glanced at me like she wasn't sure whether to smile or explain it away. "It's just family dinner, not a wedding," I added, only half joking. She shrugged. "Well, you know how your mom is. Always judging." She wasn't wrong, but something about the way she said it, it felt rehearsed. Defensive. We drove separately. She claimed she had to stop by the office afterward to pick something up, and I didn't argue. In truth, I was glad we weren't in the same car. I needed time to think, to brace myself. The tablet had been sitting in my closet for days, still full of evidence. untouched. I hadn't brought it up. Not yet. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, she was already there. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her, straightening his jacket, was David. I froze. At first, my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe he happened to stop by. Maybe she gave him a ride. Maybe no. There was no maybe here. She had brought him to my parents' house. I stepped out of the car slowly, my heart pounding like I'd just run a mile. They both turned to look at me. Stephanie's smile faltered when our eyes met. David, for his part, looked calm. Too calm. Like this wasn't a bomb going off, but just another casual Sunday. "Hey, babe," she said, walking over. David was nearby, so I figured he could tag along. "You don't mind, do you?" It took everything in me not to show it. The way my stomach dropped, the way my fists clenched at my sides. I nodded slowly. "Sure," I said. "Why not?" We walked into the house together. My parents greeted us with warm smiles that quickly turned confused as soon as David stepped through the door. "Oh," my mom said, blinking, and, "Who's this?" "This is David," Stephanie answered, too brightly. "He works with me." I figured since he didn't have any plans today, he could join us. My dad gave me a look, brief, questioning, but said nothing. We all filed into the dining room. The table was set for 4. My mom hurried to add a 5th-place setting while David made small talk with my dad about the backyard. I sat down, trying to swallow the bitter taste rising in my throat. Stephanie took the seat next to David. Not me. Her hand brushed his arm as she laughed at something he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My mom noticed. She kept glancing between the two of them, her brow furrowed. She was subtle, but not subtle enough. My dad, on the other hand, went quiet. He kept cutting into his roast, chewing slowly, listening more than talking. About 20 minutes in, my mom cleared her throat. "So, David, you and Stephanie work together?" David smiled. "Yeah, we're on a few of the same project teams." My mom nodded. "That's nice. You must work pretty closely then." "Very closely," Stephanie added, sipping her wine. I could see the tension spreading across the table. It wasn't just in me now, it was in the air, in the way forks clinked too loudly, in the way nobody met each other's eyes. Finally, my dad set his fork down. "So, John," he said, "how's work going?" I looked up, startled by the sudden directness. "Busy," I said. "Lots of rewiring jobs this month." Stephanie jumped in. "That's why I told him to take a break. He's always working." My dad didn't laugh. He just looked at her, then at me. Then he asked the question that cracked everything open. "So how long's this been going on?" Silence. Stephanie blinked. "What?" My dad leaned back in his chair. "You and this guy, David. I'm just wondering how long you've been dragging him around behind my son's back." Stephanie's face drained of color. David looked like he'd been slapped. "Excuse me?" she said, trying to laugh it off. "That's not." "Don't lie to me," my dad snapped. "I've been married 40 years. I know what it looks like when a woman's cheating." My mom reached over and touched his arm, whispering his name, but he didn't stop. "Stephanie," he said, softer now, but firmer. "You brought him to our house. Did you think we wouldn't notice? That you could just smile and pretend everything was fine?" "I didn't think," she started, then stopped. Her voice cracked. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" I asked, finally speaking. She turned to me, eyes wide. "John, please. I just didn't want to hide anymore. I thought maybe if we were all together." "You thought what?" I said, my voice rising. "That I'd sit across from the guy you've been sneaking around with and pass the potatoes like nothing's wrong?" David finally spoke. "Maybe we should talk about this in private." "No," I said, staring him down. "We're done with private. You made this public the second you walked through that door." Stephanie stood up, chair scraping hard against the floor. "I didn't mean for this to happen. You just what?" my mom asked, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "You just thought you'd parade your affair through my house? In front of my son?" Tears welled in Stephanie's eyes. She looked around the table like she was searching for an exit, for some crack to slip through. But there wasn't one. She turned, grabbed her purse, and walked out the door without another word. David followed close behind, his face red with embarrassment. I didn't stop them. The door shut with a finality I hadn't expected. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, my mom got up and started clearing plates. My dad just sat there, staring at the half-eaten roast on his plate. "I'm sorry," I said, voice low. "You didn't do anything wrong," he replied. "She did." I nodded, but it didn't feel like enough. I helped my mom with the dishes, then told them I was heading home. On the way out, she hugged me tightly, whispering, "You didn't deserve that." "I know," I said, though I didn't fully believe it yet. When I got home, her car was gone. So was her ring. And for the first time, I realized the truth wasn't just mine anymore. It wasn't some quiet suspicion I carried alone. Now it had been exposed, seen, felt. It wasn't hidden in messages or silence. It was out in the open. And nothing would be the same after that. After the dinner at my parents' house, everything changed. Not just between me and Stephanie, but between me and reality. It was like the curtain had been yanked off, and now I was seeing our marriage for what it really was. A performance I'd been watching from the cheap seats while she rewrote the script backstage with someone else. The drive home from my parents' place was long, quiet, and colder than it should have been for early spring. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't check my phone. I just drove, my hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing still holding me upright. The image of Stephanie's face, shocked, tearful, humiliated, kept flashing in my mind. And David, trailing after her like a shadow that didn't belong in my story, felt surreal, like something out of a bad TV drama. But it was real. And now that it was out in the open, I couldn't pretend anymore. She didn't come home that night. She didn't come home the next one either. She sent me a short text on Monday morning. "I'm staying at a hotel for a few days. I think we both need space." Space. I almost laughed. After months of her sneaking around behind my back, now she needed space? I didn't respond. Instead, I started preparing. There's something that happens when betrayal stops being abstract, when it becomes something you can see, touch, screensh *t. You move from hurt to strategy, from confusion to calculation. I wasn't going to yell or beg or spiral. I'd done that in my head already. Now I was going to get the full story. So I called Tom. Tom and I go way back, high school friends turned weekend fishing buddies. He works in IT security for a mid-sized firm and has always been the kind of guy who can find out anything if he wants to. I didn't tell him everything at first. Just said I thought Stephanie was hiding something, that I needed help pulling some logs, calendar data, hotel records, anything that could show where she had really been these past few months. Tom didn't ask many questions. He just said, "Send me whatever you've got." I gave him access to her shared travel calendar, old email backups she never deleted, and some other digital breadcrumbs I'd been quietly collecting. I didn't even have to break into anything. Stephanie had left a surprising amount of her digital life stored in cloud accounts we both used. It wasn't hacking. It was just finally looking. While Tom got to work, I went back to the physical world. I started with our credit card statements. They'd always been a blur of DoorDash charges, gas receipts, Amazon impulse buys. But when I looked closely, really looked, there were patterns. Double charges from high-end restaurants she never mentioned. A boutique hotel downtown that showed up more than once. A day spa in Midtown, twice in 1 week. Designer lingerie from a store she never wore anything from in our bedroom. When I cross-checked the charges against the dates she claimed to be out of town for conferences, things really started to unravel. She hadn't been in Houston when she said she was. The flight she supposedly took didn't exist. Instead, there was a charge from a wine bar 2 blocks from David's apartment. The more I found, the more disgusted I felt. Not just with her, but with myself. For not seeing it. For letting her run circles around me while I clung to the version of her I wanted to believe in. Tom called that Friday night. "You sitting down?" he asked. I was. He didn't sugarcoat it. She's been using her company's internal portal to schedule vacation days while labeling them as business trips. I checked the building access logs too. She was never badging into the out-of-state offices on those days. Where was she? Mostly Nashville. Same days the hotel charges showed up on your card. She even had the Wi-Fi connection logs at a boutique place near 8th Avenue. I didn't respond. I just stared at the wall, his words echoing in my ear like static. And David? I asked. Tom sighed. Well, let's just say he's been staying at the same hotels, same nights, booked under his rewards number. I let out a slow breath, the kind that feels like it drains a little more of your soul every time. I can send you the PDFs, he said. Screensh *TS. Booking confirmations. Whatever you need. Yeah, I said. Send it all. That night I printed everything out. I don't know why. Maybe because digital evidence felt too fragile. Too easy to swipe away or minimize. But holding it in my hands, pages and pages of lies, felt like finally putting weight to everything I'd been carrying. Hotel dates, timestamps, GPS logs, receipts, messages, a map of betrayal laid out in black and white. She came home Sunday afternoon. I heard her key in the lock, the door creaking open like it was unsure whether it still belonged to her. I didn't get up, just stayed on the couch, papers stacked beside me, waiting. She walked in quietly, suitcase in hand, hair tied back. No makeup, just tired eyes and that cautious, guilty posture that tells you someone's rehearsed what they're about to say too many times. Hey, she said, her voice thin. I didn't answer. She looked around, then spotted the stack on the coffee table. Her face went pale. What's that? I tapped the top page. Your Truth. In print. She sat down slowly, like her legs might give out, picked up the first sheet. It was a hotel receipt. Her name. David's room next door. She flipped through the others' emails, time-off logs, credit card breakdowns. Her hands trembled. Her breathing grew shallow. Where did you get this? She whispered. Does it matter? She didn't answer. For a long time, we sat there in silence. The quiet between us wasn't just tension. It was the collapse of 1,000 moments we'd spent pretending everything was fine. Dinners, vacations, inside jokes. Every memory rewritten with the knowledge of what she was doing when I thought she